Onana as Manchester United's Declan Rice, an FB Ref report to get you reminiscing about the days of Paul Scholes, a diamond midfield to unlock Bruno Fernandes, and all for just £75 million. Well, in this video I'm going to explain how it's possible. But if you, like me, are a massive fan of former legends like Kaká, Pirlo, Seedorf, Rooney, Ronaldo, whoever it is, and go over to Jersey FIFA, they've got all the Manchester United retro jerseys through the 90s and 2000s, as well as from other club and international sides as well. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. So in the video I put out the other day, which will be linked in the description and in the eye above, I detailed how I'd revamp Manchester United's defence, spending around 130 to 140 million pounds, and bringing in around 40 to 50 million pounds in player sales. But when it comes to the midfield, I think I have 3 signings that would radically change United's midfield setup, bring in the qualities that the squad desperately lacks at the moment. But let's first look at the money that we can raise through sales. So as I spoke about in the other video, I'd move on Casemiro. He's declining month on month and his wages are just ridiculous. Hopefully we can sell him to Saudi Arabia, who will take his full £18 million salary off of the books and likely pay around £15 to £20 million for him. If not, probably Syria is where he'd have to go, and United would probably have to subsidise around £8 million a season for the remaining 2 years of his contract. Now, Scott McTominay technically has 1 year left on his contract, but the club have an option to extend it by a year, and so realistically, if we do sell him to another Premier League club, given that he'd likely play more as a second striker for a side like Everton or maybe Leeds, someone like that, United should still be able to get at least £35 million for him. Amrabat I wouldn't re-sign, he's just a bit of a meh player. He's good enough for a lower table Premier League side or a 6th or 7th place La Liga or Serie A team, but watching him for United I've realised he just doesn't have the fluidity in his movement or the quality level to warrant signing him permanently. Jadon Sancho I'm not even sure about. Best case scenario you get about £40 million for him and his full £13 million salary off of the books, but realistically you are probably looking at getting around £35 million with some future add-ons maybe, alongside having to subsidise at least £4 or £5 million of his salary for the next 2 seasons, meaning that you're probably just recouping around £25 million after that. Hannibal Mejbri has a £14 million option to buy in his Sevilla loan contract, but he's not even managed to establish himself as a starter for the Andalusians, and so realistically he's probably only going to fetch around £10 million this summer if he is sold to another club. Pellistri is only going to be worth around £7 or £8 million, plus some add-ons maybe, and Donny van der Beek is likely only going to pull around the same amount as well. You've also got Anthony, who probably may just need to go on a loan. Hopefully his value goes up next season and you sell him the summer afterwards, because honestly I don't even know what to do with that guy. And so after selling those players we are looking at around 90 to 100 million pounds being recouped and at least 25 million pounds off the wage bill. Now I am going to come on to Rashford and Greenwood in a separate video, as if United sell one or both and for how much is going to dictate how much they can spend on forwards. But let me specifically talk about the midfield for this video. So how am I going to radically transform Manchester United's midfield with just a £75 million transfer spend? Well, the first player I'd bring in would actually cost the majority of that, around 60 to 65 million, and that's Amadou Onana, who I think is potentially a world-class ball-winning midfielder. I've been a massive fan of Onana since last season, and I think he's exactly what United need, which you'll see in relation to Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes when I break down his role tactically later on in the video. But first, what exactly does Onana offer, and what attributes does he need to develop in order to get even better? But I think Onana is as good a ball winner as you're probably going to get on the market right now. Athletic, powerful, strong in a tackle, and legs that can wrap around a player in Wan-Bissaka-esque fashion, making him a formidable force in the centre of the pitch with his sheer size, standing at 6'4", making him a dominant aerial presence as well. Now I will admit that looking at Onana's FB Ref report from the Premier League this season, you could be left feeling a little underwhelmed, with him not ranking incredibly highly for the usual stats that I'd look for, like dribblers tackled, percentage of dribblers tackled and interceptions. But whilst of course I am a massive proponent of using the FB Ref report metrics in order to judge how good players are, you do need the eye test alongside it for certain players, and I think Onana is one of those, as whilst not standing out out, particularly other than for the volume of tackles he completes in all thirds of the pitch. When you watch Onana play, you can certainly see his capabilities. He is similar to Declan Rice in the sense that his long legs, physicality and athleticism instills confidence when there is a turnover and the opposition look to break quickly through the centre of the pitch. As with Casemiro and Amrabat, it seems like they are running in mud at times. Whilst Casemiro can time a sliding tackle perfectly in order to win the ball back, this season I think he's certainly doing that far less, often throwing himself into tackles unnecessarily and giving away fouls and picking up yellow cards, which puts him in a precarious position for the rest of the game. However, with Onana in the centre of the pitch, he's one of those players who would terrify me if I was an attacking player for the opposition, because you know that even if you are able to break into space, he's capable of eating up the yards on you before out of nowhere, either using his physicality to wrestle you off the ball or using his long legs to put in a sliding tackle. And this is exactly what United need from a central midfielder, someone who excels at stopping counter-attacks. And in my opinion, there aren't too many better than Onana at doing this around right now. But Onana isn't a sole ball winner with limited technical ability in the same way that you could make the argument someone like Wilfred Ndidi was a few years ago. He's not just an anchor man who wins the ball back and gives it to the more creative players. He's also capable of progressing the ball himself via his passing and his ball carrying. We often see him receive the ball in front of the Everton back line, open up his body and then clip a well-weighted, fast-paced pass out to the flank, and it's this sort of switch of play which, whilst looking simple, is a sort of efficiency that often goes overlooked, acting as a mechanism to circulate the ball quickly to the opposite flank, from where his side can then look to exploit the space with the opposition's defensive shape grouped on the other side. And him ranking in the 87th percentile for his switches of play this season definitely reflects this. Now don't get me wrong, he's certainly not a deeper lying creator like Alex Garcia is, though from his FB Ref report in the Premier League this season, you can see that he ranks highly for his long pass completion rate, completing around 75% of his long passes, whilst his progressive passes and passes into the final third are fairly good as well, considering he plays for an Everton side that don't dominate possession. And this is against Manchester United, of course, and when it comes to having the ability to play incisive passes into players between the lines, this is probably the one area of Onana's game that he does need to develop the most, though it's of course defensively where Onana really makes a difference. But I do think under the right manager, in the right role, in the right system, we could see Onana develop his attacking threat, as we have seen Declan Rice do at Arsenal this season. And although I did say before that his FB Ref report defensive metrics don't look that impressive as you may think from this season, if you go back to last season, we can see that statistically he was a monster, ranking in the 99th and 96th percentiles for the percentage of dribblers he tackled, as well as the amount of challenges he lost, and also ranking in the 96th percentile for the volume of tackles he completed in the middle third. But if Onana alone doesn't get you excited, I think bringing in Alex Garcia as well should, especially when I break down how tactically a midfield of Mainu, Onana and Garcia could have the perfect balance that United need. But what exactly does Alex Garcia offer? Well, as I alluded to in the intro, his long passing ability really gets me excited, the sort that we've only really seen from Paul Pogba since Paul Scholes' retirement. In a video I am preparing on João Neves, which should be out soon, so definitely subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when that comes out, I mentioned that Garcia is a different kind of central midfielder to Neves and De Jong stylistically, not having the same ball carrying ability that those two possess, but I'd argue that his passing ability is better than Neves's and maybe even better than De Jong's, and this can be seen when we look at his FB Ref report in just a second. Receiving the ball in a deep midfield position in front of the opposition's midfield line, Garcia is able to use his wand of a right foot to ping a narrowing pass out to a wide player in an advanced position on the flank, whilst he also possesses the vision, technique and disguise to play incisive passes into players between the lines, and overall bringing the sort of creativity from that deep midfield position that United have lacked since Christian Eriksen's decline. And if you aren't convinced by Garcia just yet, his FB Ref report surely has to get you to at least reconsider, as he ranks in the high 90th percentiles for his progressive passes and passes into the final third, as well as the volume of short, medium and long passes he completes, showcasing a player who's not just a fantastic retainer and circulator of possession, but a genuine creative threat not just in terms of progressing the ball into the final third, but also aiding his side in creating chances as well, with him ranking around the 85th percentile for both his XG assisted and his expected assists as well. If you thought Onana was a good switcher of play, Garcia is a different level, also sitting in the top 1% for that metric when compared against every other midfielder in Europe's top 5 leagues. Now, whilst he isn't going to provide the same sort of ball carrying through congested zones like João Neves, or the powerful and explosive ball carrying into open space of Onana, Garcia is certainly still competent in this regard and is a player you can trust with the ball in possession, rarely being dispossessed when receiving the ball under pressure, taking on players when he needs to, or through his passing as I mentioned prior. All round, Garcia is the type of deeper line midfielder who dictates play and progresses the attack forward, and I think he does this even better than Christian Eriksen did, whilst also not being a liability at all defensively, as despite not having the same imposing stature or athleticism as Onana, he still completes a high percentage of the tackles he attempts and also doesn't lose many challenges either, showing that he's more than capable of holding his own defensively in a double pivot alongside either Mainoo or Onana. However, tactically things get interesting when we include all three and stick Bruno Fernandes at the point of a diamond. For me, Bruno Fernandes is best when he's playing as a part of the front three. I don't want him dropping deep and picking up the ball in front of the midfield line. He needs to be sitting between the opposition's defensive and midfield lines, providing a chance creating and goal scoring threat in the final third. And I think utilising Mainoo and Onana either side of Garcia at the base is a sensational midfield on paper. Now, in making this video, I've realised I could probably do a more in-depth analysis on how the diamond would function as a whole in different phases of play, and so I'm just going to show you the overall setup, and in another video I'll come on to the attacking patterns of play, how United would play out of the defensive third in the build-up phase, how they would progress the ball into the final third, as well as looking at how the diamond would function when pressing high up the pitch and sitting off in the middle third as well. And so if you are interested in hearing me analyse the diamond setup in a bit more depth, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when that video comes out. So in the build-up phase, this is what the diamond would look like, a 3-5 in the defensive third, with the two forwards sitting slightly wider, pinning the fullbacks backwards, and rather than having a central striker sitting on the halfway line with the centre-backs, you'd instead have Bruno Fernandes dropping a bit deeper in order to create that diamond shape. And even though it does look a bit odd in that future video I just told you about, I'll explain it in more depth. In the middle third, you'd essentially have what looks on paper to be a 3-2-5, with Alex Garcia in that regista role dropping between the two centre-backs. And because you've got Onana and Mainoo who can play as a pretty good defensive double pivot when United have possession, the two fullbacks, Teo on the left would be my choice for the summer transfer window as I said in a previous video, and Dalot at right back could be given the freedom and a defensive licence behind them to push further forward and hold the width in the system. And what I really like about the diamond system is it allows you to defend in a variety of different defensive shapes. Because of course, from a defensive point of view, you do need to adapt to the opponent, but one quick example is instead of having Alex Garcia drop between the two centre-backs, you could instead have him and Mainoo playing as a double pivot in a 5-4-1, and this would allow Amadou Onana to drop between the two centre-backs, which would give you that added aerial presence inside of your box. I have got a lot of other concepts of how the diamond system could be moved between different possession and defensive shapes, so I'll cover that in the future video. So thank you for watching. If you liked that video, you can check out some of my others, which will be linked in the description below.